Hello and welcome back to the Villa podcast. Once again, my name is Dan Wiseman and I will be your solo host for today's episode, where we will be looking back on yesterday's game, a massive 2-1 win against Spurs at Villa Park that saw us complete a first Premier League double over Tottenham since the 1995-96 season. I'd just like to start off by apologising first and foremost that this episode is a little bit late. I'm not shy at admitting that I don't get to go to as many games at Villa Park as I'd like to. Thankfully, it looks like I'll be going to the final two home games of the season, which is great. But without a car and relying on the trains, and as we all know, for everyone that was at the game yesterday, all of those rail strikes continue to affect travel, which makes getting to and from Manchester to B6 just that little bit more difficult. So you'll have to excuse me that this is dropped, but I hope it can provide some very nice Sunday evening entertainment, because with what the 3 points the Villa have just gone and picked up, it was a fantastic performance that I don't think really, in the grand scheme of things, we've come to expect these kind of performances at Villa Park, and that's quite something. These big games, I no longer have a massive sense of nerves beforehand. I actually went into yesterday's game quite confident, to tell you the truth, because what Unai's done has made this Villa side into a unit that more often than not will rise to the big occasion. You think that Newcastle game, especially at Villa Park, that is, you think that Newcastle game, that amazing 3-0 win, now going into this Spurs game, and all the little challenges in between, like that Notts Forest game that came off the back of the Leicester win and stuff like that. I think there might still be a little bit of work to be done on the road, but next weekend will be the real test of Villa's mettle in that sense. But yes, it was an incredible win, and we have now earned more points this season with 57 than any other season since promotion back to the Premier League, and we've done that with 2 games to go. So this season we've racked up 57 points. The next best is the COVID season. That was 2020-2021, where we got 55 and finished, I think, 11th. With a win today, Unai has also earned more Premier League points as Villa manager, 45 in 23 games, than Stevie G did in his entire tenure at the club, which saw him pick up 43 points in 38 games. The turnaround is just magnificent. And you look at the table now, and I'm recording this currently exactly 13 minutes before kickoff in that all-important Arsenal against Brighton game. So we're hoping the Gunners can do us a favour there. I mean, we've just beaten their North London rivals. The least that they can do is go and give us another 3 points on the board and just peg Brighton back just that little bit more. And we've got 2 more massive games before the end of the season. And after a little blip, after back-to-back defeats, what this game has done is earned Villa the right to play for what I don't necessarily think it's be-all and end-all next weekend. I think you have to expect the Villa are going to go and find it quite tricky at Anfield, but what it allows us to do, I think, at the very least, given the games that Brighton have got to play, sets up that huge cup final at Villa Park on the last day of the season. Obviously, Arsenal, they will be today at the time of recording against Arsenal. They go to St James's Park on Thursday. They've then got Southampton, who are just been relegated, and you have to imagine that they'll win that game. I'm not sat here trying to launch a massive conspiracy, but you do see sometimes when teams get relegated that the shackles come off, the pressure is lifted, and all of a sudden they can play a little bit better. And with that game meaning a little bit more on the south coast, you never know. You expect them to win that one, but then again, I expected them to beat Everton. They then have a trip. Man City have the trip down to the Amex. They play Man City on Wednesday the 24th, before 4 days later, they have that all-important game against us at Villa Park. And when you see how Villa Park was yesterday, I just want to shout out everybody that was at the game, because the atmosphere was amazing. And what we'll do now is we'll have a look at the match and how Villa came to pick up those 3 points. I felt like the first half was a story of complete domination. I think Unai has really turned us into a side, and you have to be this, let's get it right, if you're going to challenge not just for European places, but once you secure European football, that you can go on and be successful in those competitions. You have to be able to dominate games, and you have to be able to be comfortable in having the lion's share of possession. And that's one thing that I think really characterised the Gerrard era, actually, is that I always felt that Villa were quite frantic on the ball. I never felt that we looked comfortable in possession. There was never a real rhythm to games. It didn't look like we have any sort of practice patterns of play, so to speak, that came off the training ground. I felt that everything was rushed and heads were looking up and passes would go astray. And Villa never really felt at ease when we had the ball. And I think that's probably been, for me at least, the biggest change under Unai Emery, because we look so assured now. And look, I know a 10-game unbeaten run in the Premier League definitely helps with that. But I just felt that in the first half, from minute one, really, it was Villa, and it felt like a long time before JJ opened the scoring. I was quite shocked to see it was only 8 minutes. It felt that a lot had happened in that time, and it felt that I don't know if this is just because Villa have this quite impressive record of scoring early on in games, but with JJ slots home off a Leon Bailey assist, who I just want to give a little shout out to, because I thought he was quite good yesterday, Leon Bailey. I don't think it was a world-beating performance, but in the context of his general performance levels across the season, I was quite impressed with Leon, actually. He slides a really nice ball across to JJ after a really slick Villa move. There's a really nice touch from Watkins earlier in the build-up, and JJ finishes it off really well. All 5 of his Premier League goals this season have come at Villa Park. I should mention all of these stats, most of them come courtesy of AFC Stato, who's just magnificent at picking up these sort of things. Finishes it off really well. And Villa never really looked back from there. There's other chances in the first half. You have Emi Buendia hitting the bar. You have Leon Bailey, who probably should do a little bit more with that chance that he puts down to Fraser Forster's left, who gets a par into it relatively comfortably and keeps it out of the Villa net. The only criticism that you can have from the first half really is that we didn't score more goals. Going in at 1-0 felt like we did Spurs a favour there, really, and we presented to them a game in which in the second half they knew with a decent spell of pressure they could get back into, and so it sort of proved, really. But we played this high line, and a lot has been said about it, and for those of us that watched Match of the Day last night, you can see that, I mean, in the number of offsides the Premier League sides have racked up since Unai Emery came in, we're far and away leading the pack with 75, and I think the next closest are in the 50s or 60s, so there's a significant gap. And it puts the linesman in a tricky situation. And look, the liner got pelted yesterday for letting play go on. We had that incident where Son hits the post, and then Emi saves from Harry Kane in the first half, and then the liner puts his flag up, and where I was sat in the Trinity Road, the fans down below me certainly didn't like that decision. But linesmen are in this tricky situation now where they have to sort of let play go on, and I still don't think in their mind they're quite sure when they're supposed to put the flag up, when they're not. And we saw, as we went into the second half, it was perhaps a little bit quicker with it. I'm not sure. But yeah, I thought we were, to a man, fantastic in the first half. The second half was more of the same, really, until we hit that inevitable period where Spurs got back into it. And that's why Dougie's goal was so important, because it came at a really important time. Spurs were slowly starting to get themselves back into the game. The passing options were becoming a little bit more apparent. They were finding it easier to get the ball out, particularly to those wide areas. I thought Kulusevski had a big impact when he came on. There's that big save from Martinez, from Harry Kane. What a fantastic save that is, considering Emi hadn't had to do a lot in the game up until that point. Dougie gets dispossessed, it falls to the feet of Kane, and Martinez saves really smartly down to his right. And then you have that free kick from Douglas Luiz, and what an effort it is. It's one where obviously he and Ash were lining up to it, and I think we all want to see Ashley unbending one final free kick in front of the whole 10, but I think it suited that right foot of Douglas Luiz more. I think, if we're being honest, Fraser Forster should probably do a little bit better with it. I think he'll be disappointed, but I think because of how we set up the wall, there's the likes of Tyrone Mings in a sort of 3-man wall that we set up next to Spurs, I think that hampered his vision, and meant that he saw that ball a little bit late. And you can sort of see in the steps that he takes before he goes to save that, in his positioning, they're quite rushed, that he doesn't cover as much ground with his initial strides before diving as perhaps he'd like to. And so he can only palm it up into the roof of the net. And we had a really important 2-goal lead, because then Spurs really sort of cranked up the pressure. And I think the final, from the 86th minute onward, was the longest 10 minutes of my life after Harry Kane slots away that penalty. I'm really undecided on that penalty decision. I think it's 50-50. I think how you see it ultimately comes down to what colour you're wearing on the day. If you're in white, you probably think it's a penalty. If you're in claret and blue, you probably think Harry Kane's made the most of it there. Every time I watch it, I see something different. I still can't make my mind up on it. And I think that's reflected in how long the VAR check took. It took a long, long time. And even then, they could only recommend that Peter Banks, the referee, went to the monitor to check. And you know, when that happens, it's just human psychology, you know, the nature of the human brain, that when someone's telling you to go and review something that you've done, it's just that you've made an error. And naturally, you're looking for something to go and change your mind. And so it proved. And Kane sticks it away well. None of the usual World Cup antics from Emi Martinez after those changes in FIFA regulation. And then what followed was a really, really long 10 minutes. There's a chance from Kulusevski where he cuts in onto his left foot and bends it wide of the far post. I've seen that clip a few times now, and every single time I think it's going to fall in the bottom corner. But aside from that, it was quite comfortable, really. And we saw it out in decent fashion when it came to it, really. I thought, if we're looking for man of the matches, I think it's pretty unanimous that you haven't got to look much further than John McGinn. But I thought Douglas Luiz was absolutely sensational. I thought Tyrone Mings had a great game. Emi came up when it mattered with that big save. Jacob Ramsey is just so consistent. I know I'm listing off a few names here. I think every game we see just how much Alex Moreno is bringing to that left-hand side and what he can give to Villa. But no, I think Super John takes the spoils today. He's going to be my man of the match. He was just incredible. Got some of the stats for you. 89% passing accuracy, 58 touches, 3 successful dribbles, 6 passes into the final third, 100% accurate crosses with 2 from 2, 4 interceptions, 12 recoveries, 8 ground duels won, and he was fouled 4 times, those last 2 being the most of any player on the pitch. Just a monstrous performance from Super John, looking like he did back in the Championship, and he's out here doing it with sides that were, contending for European football with. It's just sensational. What a performance it was from Super John. I think Villa Park is such a fantastic place to be when it's in the sunshine. As I said, I just wanted to thank all the fans that made it a really special occasion yesterday. I think we did a great job. Brilliant turnout. It was rocking. That's exactly what we want. Yesterday was also Villa's dedicated Her Game 2 fixture as well, which I think was a really nice sort of cherry on the icing on the cake, or whatever you want to call it. I just want to shout out the amazing work that organisation does, along with the Villa Bellas as well. It was nice to see them get some love on social on what was just a brilliant, brilliant day for our football club. We've got 2 more games till the end of the season. This is the place to be. We'll be here for a preview, post-match, and any big stories that happen in between as we build up towards the transfer season. This is the place to get your Villa scoop. So make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe. Leave a comment down below. I love talking to you guys about the game, about what you saw. Maybe I've missed anything out. Maybe you disagree with me. Who knows? Maybe, perhaps more unlikely, you agree with me. I always love having that conversation down below. So leave a comment on how you felt about yesterday's game, who your man of the match was, how you found the day as a whole. I absolutely loved the experience. There's also a link in our bio. Dan and I, Dan's currently out in Orlando, living the dream. We'd appreciate it so much if you went and checked that out. For those people, we know that Villa Park is a tough place to go to, and we know that with the pricing, myself included, sometimes it's not a place everybody can get to all the time. And we do a bunch of other content on there around match day. That's why we put those shorts up of the players celebrating with the whole tent and stuff after the game, just to try and bring people who aren't at Villa Park a little bit closer to the action. And a bunch of that stuff goes on over there on our TikTok, on our Instagram, and everything like that. So make sure you go and give us a follow there. We'd be very grateful. I'll be back midweek at the very latest with a preview, but who knows, if we have more Ferran Torres, Marco Asensio news, I'll be back with another Transfer Rumour Mill episode. But in the meantime, guys, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. If you're listening to this on your morning commute or whenever, have a great week. You'll see me midweek for another episode of the Villa podcast. Thanks a lot for watching, and of the Villa.